I'm Barry Farber. Let me explain who we are and what we're up to. John Van Soest is a young American, 32 years old, Vietnam veteran. He's my regular listener to the radio show in New York City where I talk back and forth with listeners, and he admits he is, by my standards, a racial bigot. I wanted to meet him. I wanted to compare mentalities with him because he, unlike most bigots, is not just sitting in a bar room cussing and spitting vulgarities out at different people of different skin colors. He speaks well. He handles the English language well. And I figured he was different. He was somebody I would like to get to know. Having gotten to know him, I wanted him to meet somebody who I know good and well is worth knowing because I've known him for years on these microphones, Leroy Colbert. And Leroy, does this remind you of the 1960s? We used to have this all the time during the 1960s. I'm beginning to get a little bit homesick. Now then, I'm just kidding about that modified martial law. Let each of you speak your hearts without interruption, and bear in mind that freedom from interruption carries with it responsibility to be reasonably brief. John Van Soest.
Well, Barry, Leroy's speaking as though I want blacks in slavery, and I don't want the rights or the wrongs that have been done to blacks corrected. I'm just saying that I don't want my country destroyed and whites discriminated against like blacks were to right those wrongs. I mean, this idiotic affirmative action where whites are outrageously discriminated against, and things are being done to them for the same reasons that they were done to blacks because of their color. Do you ever notice there's a new thing going on in this country, that if you want to make something sound legal and correct, no matter how wrong it is, you put a legal sounding name on it and it becomes all right. They use that inane term, affirmative, for discrimination against whites, just like the Students for a Democratic Society hid behind they were like termites hiding in the woodwork of democracy, and they used the term democratic. They're all socialist and Marxist. So this is what's going on in this country. No matter what you say, if you take a look around, most of the negative things that are happening in this country are being caused by blacks and Puerto Ricans, and it's because they are just naturally arrogant, aggressive, and they walk around with a chip on their shoulder saying, I'm going to get back at that white racist society, and we're not going to take nothing, and nobody's going to stop us. And these safari bearers with these gigantic radios on their shoulders are a perfect example. They don't want to listen to the music that loud. They do it because this is a sign of belligerence and arrogance. The new sign of well-being is the radio instead of the Cadillac. They can't afford the Cadillac, so they go around and carry these gigantic radios on their shoulders and blare them as a sign of defiance to the white racist society. And I've got 1,000 other things to say, but I'll let Leroy just
But you see, the most important, the tragedy with you, I listen to you, I would like to discuss something like this with somebody that has bona fide complaints based on, you are outright hostile, bigoted man. You're talking about radios. You see, dealing with you is impossible because you're talking about the arrogance of kind of loud radio. You're getting so picky, you're getting so. The problems in this country is not picky. It's not petty. It's not a boy walking down the street with a radio. It's not a guy looking for a cat. That is the problem of this country. The problem of this country goes way back. You see, thinking people in this country, thank God there are thinking people in this country, realize what has been done to the sight of the black. They realize when you discriminate against people for 300 years, you don't just pretend it never exists. There's a price to pay. There is a price to pay for 300 years of discrimination. Probably whatever job you have today, if you had to compete on the equal basis with a black man, you probably wouldn't have had it. And of course, this 300 years have crippled the sight of the black man. Now we have to correct it in this country. The problem has to be corrected. It cannot be corrected with people like you. It has to be corrected with people that look at the overall problem to save this country. What you're thinking and what you're talking is the destruction of this country. Because what you're trying to do is create a war between white and black. And you know who suffers? You, because the blacks have nothing. You see? And you are the bigot, the hater, the person that's going to take little things like a man with a radio and little things, arrogant. Can you imagine the nerve to talk, blacks are arrogant? Arrogant in what respect? You know, if they were arrogant, the whole country would be in flames. You see?
More blackmail.
No, look, let me tell you something. Let me tell you one thing.
More blackmail.
Well, let me tell you.
Do what we want, or we're going to destroy.
Look, let me tell you. If they were going to destroy it, let me tell you something. Nothing bothers me more than the white man's lack of appreciation of the nonviolent way and the docile way in which the blacks have accepted the shame and the humiliation they have in this country. I'm amazed that I see white people so excited about the Hungarian freedom fighters, the Cuban freedom fighters, and never realize that if blacks took the same vein, there would be no United States for you to sit here and holler your racist, hostile, nasty attitude, which is non-productive, which will accomplish absolutely nothing. And all it will do would make the gap between the races wider. And I don't believe that is what we want to do in this country, because nothing can be accomplished. We have to get down and get these two-bit phony politicians that are only interested in one thing, votes. And we have to get together with reasonable people, not people like you, because there's no hope for you. All you want to do is condemn and make excuses and blame all the troubles of the world on blacks and Puerto Ricans, which are powerless. Now, well, all right, you tell your part.
I'm not trying to blame all the troubles of the world on blacks and Puerto Ricans. I'm blaming all the troubles of the United States on mainly blacks and Puerto Ricans. You say that the reason that I'm just spewing out my frustration is because I have no power to do these. I'm not a mayor or I'm not a governor, but I would like to sit down with a governor and tell them exactly how I feel, because they have no guts to do anything about it. If they lay the law down and say, you get your rear end in school and you learn and you don't sell drugs and you don't beat up people and rob or rape, or you're going to pay the penalty, they're afraid to say that because the NAACP will be out demonstrating 50,000 strong because some governor had the nerve to say something like this. And blacks aren't thankful that whites are trying to correct the situation. Why
should I be thankful? If you got a foot in my behind, if you have a foot in my behind and you pull it out slowly, I'm going to thank you at the rate you pull it out? It should never been there in the first place.
Not thankful for that, but at least thankful to see that these wrongs have been done and we're trying to do something about them.
Look, you know, when I grew up, you know, now what you're saying to me is this. You are a bigot. If was not one single incident of crime in this country perpetrated by a black, you'd still be a bigot. You're looking for excuses. When I grew up, crime was almost non-existent among blacks and in this country. You couldn't get a ham sandwich with dignity. You couldn't get a job. There was no crime. Where was all this crime?
When we reconvene, we'll make it a three-way war. I'm Barry Farber, and every time I try to walk into the troubled valley here in my white robes as a grand conciliator, a peacemaker, a diplomat, both sides start opening machine gun fire, and I got to run back to my cave up at the top of the hill. Scattering my posies behind me that I had intended to pass out to the respective sides here. Leroy Colbert and John Van Soest. Leroy Colbert, former Mr. America, a black. John Van Soest, an American white who says the negative things that are going on in America are because of blacks and Puerto Ricans. Gentlemen, go ahead and have your last burst of machine gun fire at each other, because in the break right now, John Van Soest was talking about the flags. Go through that flag routine again, John.
Well, I was just saying that I'm tired of seeing red, green, and black flags on the back of black cars without an American flag there, and Puerto Rican flags without American flags. I do not... Leroy said in the last segment that I would be a racist regardless. I do not like two types of people that are destroying this nation. 90% of the blacks, as far as I'm concerned, and 90% of the Puerto Ricans. I think that Czechoslovakians that have come to this country, the people from Eastern Europe, England, all those people, a lot of people from India, China, these are all excellent citizens for the most part. They don't destroy. They don't put graffiti all over the train cars. These people love this country. They appreciate this country. But the South Americans, Dominican Republic, Puerto Ricans, and the young blacks coming up today that align themselves with these people because this represents a united front against whitey. These people unite, and they despise this country, and the proof of it is in the people that they love. Muhammad Ali, who's never said anything good about this country and despised whites. Angela Davis, who's an admitted communist, is a big hero of the blacks. Malcolm X, who's an out-and-out anti-white and anti-American racist skunk. You could go right down the list. All the heroes of the blacks are anti-American and anti-white. And the blacks all cheer them on. Jesse Jackson, too. They have the nerve.
Cheer you on, right?
They have the nerve to call Jesse Jackson Reverend. This guy's nothing but a rebel-rousing troglodyte.
All right. My point is, let me now walk down into the valley. Put your guns down.
What fascinates me, Barry, though, is this fella here really thinks he's important. He really thinks that his white skin makes him a messiah. Now I look at this guy and I watch him rambling and raving like he's some guru sitting on a mountain, making the decision what races are viable and which isn't. He thinks his white skin, what have you ever done in life? What makes you anything? What makes you sit here and condemn and decide whose heroes should be who? Who the hell are you?
Well,
But a white face, that's all you are. And that makes you something special, right?
I have not said that.
Well, you're acting like it.
No.
You're sitting here saying what races are admissible, what races are not.
No, I'm not saying
Who the hell are you?
I'm saying two races.
What have you done? Have you done anything but breathe?
Let me answer you. I'm saying two races. At the beginning of the program, you said I was pompous. Now who's being pompous?
You are pompous because you're the one I have yet to mention who should live on this earth and who shouldn't.
No,
who are you? You think because you're white skinned that you're somebody? What have you done? Have you helped anybody? What are you? You're nothing.
I'll tell you what I've done.
What's special about you?
Oh, wait a minute. Who says that I'm
You must be special
reacting
because you're telling me what races should be coming into the country, what races are viable, what races you respect, what heroes these races have. Who are you?
Once again,
a white face?
Once again, you're putting words in my mouth.
Well, you didn't say that.
Gentlemen. Okay, Mr. Van Soest.
Once again, he's putting words in my mouth. I'm speaking of two races. I would not want to get rid of any other races in this country. Just these two. So I don't want to kill them. I just want to. They're so anxious to get out of America. I mean, they despise these two. So I don't want to kill them. I just want to. They're so anxious to get out of America. I mean, they despise this country so much. I don't know why they're not leaving. Right. They seem so unhappy with America.
All right. Here's my viewpoint. I have met both of you before. Leroy will recognize what I'm saying when I agree with him that the politicians are at fault. I don't think you can say 90% of this, and 90% of gypsies don't play the violin, 90% of Italians do not sing in the shower, 90% of Mexicans do not lean up against a cactus and say they went that way. I understand, John Van Soest, as a young man, you think that it's 90% blacks hate America. They, in fact, do not. But that's a different argument, and I've had that one with you, and I'll have that with others from now on, because I believe that the best hidden news in America is that the overwhelming majority of blacks and Puerto Ricans are middle class, if not in their economy yet, at least in their values. They want what you want, an end of crime. They want an end of degradation. They want people to obey the law. They want to educate their children. They want to clean up and raise standards at every single hand. Now then, Leroy, let's consider the following. There are hordes, gangs of kids in every major American city, destroying, defacing that city, terrorizing it, cutting off its economic circulation by making the streets unsafe to walk in. We all agree on that. Turn the page. An overwhelming, a disturbing, lopsided majority of those marauding gangs are non-white. Non-white. Now then, First of all, who do we blame? Let me just draw a scorecard now, in case you're trying. This is not television, so you can't see us. John Van Soest blames blacks and Puerto Ricans. He says they are by nature violent and destructive. Leroy Colbert and Barry Farber blame opportunistic politicians, mostly white, who have created a climate in this country which makes it not only permissible but almost inevitable. It downright invites the wrong kind of growing up with the wrong kind of attitudes. It engenders hostility and destruction. Now, Leroy, what do we do about it? We all three agree that there are marauding gangs of non-whites, okay? I agree with you, Leroy, that we should not exacerbate relations. We should not get into throwing, shooting, or even shouting. Then we would simply have no country. The first thing John said was he loves this country. I'm going to take him at his word. If he loves this country, he does not want racial war. I love this country. I know good and well you love this country. I haven't yet told John Van Soest why. My regular listeners will remember the way you grew up. But what do we do about it?
Well, excuse me. Well, Barry, let's face it. I'm black, and I grew up among blacks, and I know a lot more blacks than John knows. And John only knows blacks too, so he can build his vendetta. But what I'm trying to say is this country for blacks is the best country in the world. I mean, materially and opportunity at the present time. Now, when I grew up, I happened to be of a very strong will, and I have the type of mind that a lot of all the rejections and that I got growing up as a young boy, I was able to overcome because I knew that wallowing in the excesses of discrimination in this country wasn't going to help me to get ahead. I have friends that are today very bitter. I have friends that fought in World War II and told about the discrimination and how he saw his buddy die on the front, and when he got back to the United States, the German prisoners were able to eat in the restaurant he couldn't eat in. You know, this is something that whites wouldn't tolerate for a moment. It's not in their nature. And I think we must first understand the nature of people. Blacks, as a rule, are more docile than whites. This is no doubt about it. You're talking about, they are more docile. Whites will not stand for 10 minutes what blacks have stood in this country. I mean, you can see it all. There's no sense in we're trying to pretend that because you got gangs running around stealing because they can get away with it, that somehow blacks are so much strong. Black people, as a rule, are more docile. The acceptance of slavery for the years that the blacks accepted in this country is unheard of in history, without real attempts to overcome their oppressors. Now, in this country, I don't believe that. I think white people should basically understand that there has been a deep psychological scarring of the black in this country. Now, instead of condemning the excesses that the blacks are committing now, which some blacks are committing now, is to understand the problem and try to correct it. We either going to live in this country together, or we're going to live in this country destroyed. There's no doubt about it, because there's no way with this, what John is talking, there's nothing can lead to except bloodshed in the street. Now, I feel that the only thing has to be done to stop this marauding and the crime and the rape and whatever you want is that the laws must be carried out and the criminal must be told that he is not going to be pat on the back because he is black. That is the only way this is going to stop.
Okay.
Cuddling criminals have to stop.
Could we agree on that? Go back to enforcement of the law. Enforce the law upon the wrongdoer, regardless of race, color, creed, or color. Right? Okay, John.
The breaking of the law has nothing to do with past deprivations.
When we get back together, we'll continue. It'll be John's turn.